Good evening and welcome to League of Women Voters Presents. I'm Jim Robertson, and tonight we're going to talk about the upcoming August sales tax election for capital improvement projects. This is a regular, every 10 years, for the last couple of cycles we've been looking at this tax for renewal, and it funds some pretty important city services and needs over the next 10 years. My guests are, to my left is Bob Roper, and he is with the Foundation for Columbia's Future.
Correct.
Dave Nichols is Assistant Public Works Director.
That's right, thank you.
And Chief Randy White with the Fire Department.
Sure.
And you all have some stake in this game coming up in August. Bob, can you start us a little general information about this tax?
Sure. Every survey that I've seen in recent years from the citizens, with respect to the citizens of our fair city, all say that some of the highest priorities are inevitably public safety and roads, streets, sidewalks, and quality buildings and the like. And that's exactly what this is all about. 10 years ago, we enacted it and got a lot of quality capital improvements with this quarter-cent sales tax. It's up for renewal. If we don't do it, then a lot of things won't get done. If it's renewed, it will raise roughly $63 million of revenue for all these capital projects, which Dave and Randy will talk about in more detail. That will be added to by three other sources, so the total is about $99 million that we'll have available for these important projects, and they are in fact primarily dedicated to public safety and roads, streets, sidewalks, as well as some buildings that frankly need some repair also. So I'm happy to be a member of the committee supporting it. I think this is exactly what the citizens on a consistent basis say they want done, and the project list, which they'll talk about I'm sure to some extent, I think is a great list of stuff that really needs to be done for our city. And I'm enthusiastically urging people to vote yes. I think we need all this stuff.
Thanks. It's a quarter cent.
Quarter cent.
Yeah. And you say it'll bring in about $63 million over 10 years.
$63 million, and we get about, let's see, I've got the list here somewhere, roughly $20 million from the county road tax fund. We get about $3.5 million from MoDOT on a special fund, and finally development fees about another $12 million. That's how we get up to $99 million total.
I see. Okay.
So it's a big fund of money over 10 years to do a lot of quality capital improvements that I think the city desperately needs.
A big portion of that money, Randy, is for public safety, including equipment for the fire department, $10 million worth.
Yes, sir.
Some people think that's a lot of money for a fire truck.
Yeah. Well, they are very expensive pieces of apparatus. When you have a truck like that that's very specialized and very expensive to build, limited market for them, what ends up happening is the cost of them is driven by a lot of different factors. Basically, it comes down to that's a very special use vehicle. And so currently, they're in the $750,000 range for the smaller, what we call a quint. And the last ladder truck we bought, which we have two of in Columbia and one in reserve status, the last ladder truck that we bought was right at $1 million. So when you look at the way we procure our apparatus, and we've done this for the past 15 to 20 years, we look at buying and replacing one fire apparatus per year because of the expense. And that's part of why it's on a capital improvement situation rather than just a general fund type situation. We replace one per year, and when we replace one that's at the end of its service life, or at least the service life for us, it rolls out of the fleet. So over the course of 10 years, we'll replace one truck a year, roughly, to keep the fleet
schedule
maintained.
You've been on for 15 or 20 years.
Yes.
What happens to the ones that are retired?
Basically, what we'll do is we'll run it in frontline status for 8 to 10 years, so that means it's running every day. We'll move that truck to reserve status, where it'll have a little easier life, almost not quite out to pasture, but we'll put it in reserve status for 4 or 5 years and use it to supplement the other fleet when we have issues or we need to replace something. And then after 4 or 5 years in reserve status, it'll roll out of the fleet. And we roll it out at that time while it still has value. Fire trucks, like I said, are very, very specialized, and the market for an old fire truck is not there. But if we can roll it out of the fleet at about this 14, 16-year range, it still has value to smaller municipalities that can afford a truck like that, or a volunteer agency. So you want to capture some of that at the end. If you wait too long, then nobody wants it, and it ends up being scrap metal because there's not another use for a fire truck particularly.
Does technology drive any of that price? Are the trucks that you're buying now superior in technology than the ones you bought 10 years ago?
It's amazing that if you look at a 14 or 15, and that's one of the perception issues that we have, if you look at a 14 or 15-year-old truck, it looks very similar to a brand new truck. What you can't see is the safety improvements, the improvements in technology, pump technology, electronics, everything that goes with the upgrades. And then there's also a component of our industry that trucks have to meet NFPA standards, National Fire Protection Agency standards, and that occurs in cycles. So every so many years they change the NFPA and they move in the new safety features or new emissions or whatever needs to come in. And if you wait too many cycles and let it get too many cycles out, then it's not of value to another department, because they don't want to buy one that's already past the useful cycle.
Can't be accredited.
Right.
What other expenditures are on the public safety side of the list?
If this ballot issue were to pass, I'll speak to the fire department first. Obviously, the biggest portion of ours will be the truck replacement. There's roughly $1 million in this ballot issue for the repair of roughly three fire stations. We have 3 fire stations, stations 4, 5, and 6, that were built in the early 70s and haven't had much done to them since. And so roughly $1 million worth of repairs to extend the useful life, rather than building new stations. Put that money into the older stations and bring them, extend their life, bring them back up to date. Then there's $1 million for future fire station sites, not necessarily new buildings yet, but because we're not in a place where we can staff those stations yet. But we need to get out into the areas where we see or already have a need and locate some property so that we can buy and hold that until we can actually build a station and staff it. And then we've got roughly $500,000 for improvements to our training facilities. We have a training tower that was built in 1976 that is in need of either tear down, replace, or substantial upgrades. We've got a training building that needs upgrades, was built in the 80s. And we have a burn building where we conduct live burning training. And it was built in 1999, but for a building that you try to burn down intentionally over and over again, it
takes some wear.
It's needing some help.
Yeah.
So.
Are you, and I'm going to digress a little bit here, but you were talking about buying sites for future fire stations. Are our response times adequate now? Are we getting too thin in fire protection?
What's happened is twofold for us. We have areas of what we call areas of concern. We've got a few areas on the outskirts of Columbia where the goal for a fire department and how we're judged is how far from the station to the area that you're covering is. And you look at a 4-minute travel time. How far can you travel on the road network to within 4 minutes? And we've got 2 areas that are definitely high concern for us. They're outside of that 4-minute travel window, and we need to get a presence out into those to keep the response times down. And then we have an infill and a volume issue that's affecting us, and that also can affect response times because the population has grown substantially, and some of that is infill where the population growth is in an already established area, and some of it is geographically. So we do have some areas of concern.
So that's why this kind of planning ahead is so important, I guess, because you can't just all of a sudden think, oh my gosh, we're in trouble.
If you wait to buy the ground out into the area where everybody's developing, then it's already developed and the land's not available, or it's very expensive to buy. So you try to get out a little ahead of it if you can.
Well, Dave, that only leaves about, what, 90 million that you're responsible for? More or less.
More or less, yeah.
Tell us a bit about, and I've seen the lists on the city website of the projects, and they're spread across wards.
Right.
How did you arrive at those lists?
Well, we started with ward meetings where we would go out into the ward. We handed out kind of a wish list to people and said, if you had $100 million, what would you spend it on? And it was pretty varied from ward to ward. But from that, we were kind of taking a lot of the priorities from that list. We also did a citizen survey online and got feedback from that. And then we had a committee with staff and 2 council representatives to kind of go through and realign priorities. And then we actually went to council with the list and got their feedback and got the list pared down.
Mm-hmm. And are you have a high level of confidence that those are the projects that
we
people
have
wanna see?
the list is long. The needs are long.
Yeah.
It is tough to prioritize. You look at, like Randy said, growth. You look at what we call average daily traffic. We look at accidents. We look at just what we call level of service areas, how well we can get people through intersections, and just try to prioritize the best we can where we think that the need is right now and in 10 years. And that's the thing that people don't realize is that we anticipate some growth. We anticipate it's a lot easier to build a widening now than it would be after infrastructure's there, after things that are may need to be moved, and that's expensive as well. So we do a lot of planning in that as well. So
one of the more controversial projects, it's been controversial so far, is Forum Boulevard.
right.
And the down at the Hinkson Creek there.
Mm-hmm.
Do people say, well, just put in the left or right out, right in?
Right. Yeah,
that'll fix the problem.
We've heard that.
Yeah.
We've looked at Forum is it's 4 lanes on either side of it. Okay, so that's the middle section is the only section that's not. There are 5 crossings of the Hinkson Creek that I don't know if people realize from South Columbia into Columbia, and that's Scott Boulevard, Forum Boulevard, Providence Road, Rock Quarry Road, and Old 63. And when we did the Scott Boulevard last year, we closed that bridge, and we shifted traffic, and we realized that that put a lot of pressure on those other crossings. And so we feel like Forum is needed for that access, really, and both from an emergency standpoint and just from just getting people back and forth. We have heard that there is that bottleneck down there due to one entrance, but we feel like it's a worthy project to go ahead and make that a 4-lane.
So there's more to it than just making it easier to get in and out.
Oh yes,
Wilson's.
yeah, and I had a question about that today about how that affect Wilson, and the way we'll be able to do that if we can move more people in platoons and get more people through there, you tend to create more gaps. But when you're stacked end to end with cars, there's no gaps for people to make that maneuver. So we feel like having the capacity there that will help that situation.
Sure. What about all the projects that are not controversial? What's the main?
Well, we've kind of classified them in 4 categories. Major maintenance is the first one that we've identified streets that have just reached their useful life. They're gone from the what we call the subgrade up into the pavement. So we need to just take that down to the subgrade, build that base back up and put new pavement in. And that's not going to address sidewalks or any other issues. That's just taking care of pavement. And we've got roughly $5 million in that category and about 3 or 4 roads that we've identified that have just exceeded what we can do in routine maintenance. Mm-hmm. We try to catch those before that happens, but sometimes we just aren't able to get to all the roads that need that help. Then we've got a category where we call an intersection improvements, and these are intersections that have what we call a poor level of service, so we have a lot of delay on each leg. And we're looking at certain intersections that may be signalized, maybe roundabouts. That's every time I've mentioned roundabouts, people question that, but if the ballot were to pass, we would do engineering analysis and determine which would be the appropriate fix for those intersections. And then we've got the category which is what you mentioned in form that has a major road, and that is to do form and Nifong Road, and to do a widening on Ballinger out east of town from Clark Lane out to Mexico Gravel. There's a stretch there that has seen a lot of traffic out there. And then one new road that's on alignment is a Discovery Parkway that is our only one on this ballot, whereas the last ballot we had several new roadways. And this one would take the Gans Interchange that's south of town by Discovery Parkway and go up to Rolling Hills Road through the University track. And what that gives us is an east corridor, if you will, because the Rolling Hills section from New Haven to WW was improved by the county. It's set for a 4-lane at some point. 2 have been built now. Right-of-way is set aside. The same as from WW up to Richland Road, and then from Richland up to Grace. So essentially what our long-range plan is that you could get off Lake of the Woods and get on a continuous roadway and come all the way into South Columbia. And then our last category is what we just call annual streets, sidewalks. Traffic calming, we've got a lot of money in for sidewalk upgrades this particular ballot, and that allows us to have some flexibility when needs come up that we really haven't identified. And some of those needs may be on some other list but we just aren't able to say for sure at this point. So this gives us some flexibility to have money to go into those.
Bob?
Couple of points. I knew they'd have all the details. They're good at that. But something that I think is maybe a little underappreciated, but I think is very important, and that's that north, I guess it's called a Municipal Service Center North. It's both the fire department and the police department will have quite a presence there. And I still remember from the minute Chief Ken Burton came to town, he pointed out in some interaction I had with him that this is a city of 65 square miles roughly in size, and yet all of the service comes out of one downtown location, which is probably a little overburdened. Now we're talking about building that substation north, and ultimately part of this is to acquire ground and do the same in the south. His take on it was that it really will help us as far as response times and flexibility by having substantial police presence in the north, in the middle of town, and then in the south. And this is the first go-around to get started on that, to start constructing that. And I think that's a big deal, and it's something that is important to, I think, all of us, because we all know that we're struggling to have enough officers on the street. The last thing you need is to have them be delayed far too long in getting to the location that they need to be at. So I wanted to make that point. I think that's a pretty big deal, and I think that's a great move going forward, and that's will help our department a lot.
If I'm not mistaken, this issue or this go-round will build phase 1 of that center, right?
Exactly.
And what does that consist of?
Well, I think what it means is that the north substation, which is what I'm going to call it, I think they start building that in either 2016 or 17. So they're going to do the whole deal there. The south part will have to be done later, but I think aren't they planning? Y'all planning to buy some property and have a salt dome there, and do other planning that will ultimately include police presence also.
The purpose or the concept behind the municipal service centers is that you decentralize some of your services, but then centralize them in like the north area. So the municipal service center concept means that you take either closely associated tracks or one track of ground and have the opportunity to put multiple city services on it. Initially, it'll start out with the land purchase and then a police station in the north for the north service center. But at some point, and depending on where it's at, you could also have a fire station there. You could also have a salt dome there. You could also have the fueling stations and other city services out of that location. On the South Service Center, they're looking at locating the land, and then they're also looking at that time, putting the salt dome and a fueling station and a service station there for vehicles. And I can let Dave explain why it's important to have that
Yeah.
salt station down there.
When we're our facility's on Big Bear Boulevard, which is north of 70, and so when we're removing snow in the southern part of the city, and we run out of salt, well, that truck then has to get off the street, and even from Thornbrook, it's a 30-minute drive on dry pavement, and you can imagine having snow and everything else. So that truck's out of service for maybe 2 hours of plowing. And so if we have a facility in the south area of town, then that response time is much quicker. The fueling's there. We'll have a garage because we have to replace blades and things like that. So we really think it'll be an efficiency to the citizens to having that center down there.
And has the land been acquired for the North Center?
No,
No,
not for either.
Just starting with
We're just
from
looking
scratch.
at.
Oh, you have a fire station where Blue Ridge Road or Providence
Yes,
somewhere?
yeah. Station 4 is in that area in the north, and 9 is over at Garth and the top part of Garth. But basically, whether a fire station would or wouldn't work kind of depends on where that land is acquired
Sure.
and everything. If it's far enough north, we have a need up Waco in the Waco Road Route B area for further expansion up there. Maybe not right away, but that's one of our areas of concern. So if the land lays out right for another fire station, that would be a place that we could also be able to do.
Good. So Dave, you're talking about sidewalks, and you may have said this, but I missed it. Are there a lot of new sidewalk construction in it, or is
There's planning's put out. We have a master plan on our arterials and collectors, and so when we have identified gaps, sections that aren't there, then this money will be used to fill in those gaps to make sure that we have connectivity on our higher volume roads, higher pedestrian facilities and things like that. So we'll look at that master plan and then prioritize from that. We also have money in there for maintenance of some of the sidewalks that we do have that just need the joints aligned and fixed. So there's more money in this ballot than there was in the past one because we've seen a need for that area. So
And is this work will be something that is going to stand out to Columbia? Is there, I mean, a lot of these things are not sexy and they not
and
high
like the last ballot,
visibility.
I think we built 6 bridges at the last ballot, and we're really maintaining more and dealing with congestion and capacity of our system. We're not really addressing as much expansion as the last one. So yeah, not a lot of it's not real sexy, but we do think that some of those higher priority routes will make a huge difference in travel times for citizens. So.
I've got to point out one last thing, and I know we're getting close on time. I think it's important for voters as they decide how to cast a vote to say, well, how'd we do on the last ballot issue? Because it was a 10-year deal, and from what I can tell, there were 14 road projects. 12 are done, 2 are in the final phases.
That's correct.
And I think because of the downturn in the economy, maybe one fire station wasn't able to be built, but everything else was done. And I think it's important for people to know that 10 years ago when they voted for that, what they voted for actually got done, except for the intercession of bad economic times that made us unable to complete that one project. But I think I'm right about that.
That's correct.
Aren't I? That everything that was promised was done. I always look at stuff like that. You want to make sure that if it was promised before that it was actually done, so that if you're asking for people's vote again, they'll have some confidence you're really going to do what you say you will.
That's an excellent point, and I think one of the things that we've been hearing for the past few months are a lack of trust from opponents of these kinds of projects. This is a good example of where the city has followed through on what they had promised in the last 10-year plan. And
Yeah, I think so. I mean,
and another point I think is there has been really no organized opposition to this. So I don't know what you can take from that, but I would think it would be a hopeful sign
I guess it could be apathy. Hopefully, it's people actually agree with what we're urging them to do. That it's a good vote, and a positive vote will be very good for the city as a whole. That's the way I'm going to interpret it. For now.
Okay, that sounds great. It's the only issue on the ballot in August 4th is the election. What else should we know about it?
Well, one thing that's on there that I don't know if you talked about it, Dave. The Grissom Building.
The Grissom
That's a
Building?
big deal too.
Yeah, that's our main facility right now for all our street operations, fleet
Yeah.
operations. It is in need of some real major overhaul. It's built in the 60s. It's had various stages of renovation. One thing we do, we've diversified our fleet into using compressed natural gas. Part of that fleet area needs to be retrofitted to be able to work on those vehicles. Right now, we've got to send them off to a Parks and Rec facility that was upgraded, and we're not able to keep up with what we need. So the Grissom Building, it's going to be a first stage, if you will. We'll do a needs assessment, and we'll get a long-term plan for that site, and then work towards that.
Yeah.
But the money in there is just kind of what I call seed money to take care of the immediate needs, new roofs and things like that, but then also let us work for that site into a master plan. So.
And from what I understand from the ward meetings and the surveys, that's a popular project.
That was, and that
which is-
surprised me that people really
yeah.
were interested in that. So
I think that's a good sign.
I do too.
Well, appreciate you all being here tonight to talk about this. We've had a couple of stories in today's Tribune,
You did.
and we'll
Good
be
stories.
covering it along, and hope that people will get out to vote. And good luck.
thank you.
Thanks for having
And
us.
thanks for joining us tonight too. And hopefully you learned something, and we'll get out in August and vote. Until next time, good night.